get them through the.
So we have five slide decks.
I don't have to, but I think I'm gonna do like this.
Janet.
So these are the slides, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I will just download those.
So you will display them?
I can just.
Okay.
Just give me a second.
You're still in .com?
I'm still.
Sure.
Yeah. I hope so. All right, welcome everyone. So this is a Diamond working group meeting in IETF 95, Buenos Aires. You are all very welcome this beautiful morning, the last day of IETF. Still 2 more hours and we are free to fly away.
So you're not displaying anything?
I am.
Okay, sorry.
I'm just putting myself together. Just give me a one. So I think that we have our usual note taker present. Thank you. This is the most convenient thing, you know.
You've been doing Jabber spread, chat room.
Yeah, maybe we can ask if someone.
Could try to do both minutes and Jabber.
Can someone be in the Jabber room? Just to check. So we have remote participants. So they can use, so we have Janet and Lyle. I'm expecting also Jean-Jacques maybe soon. And so it would be nice if we have someone on the Jabber room. Someone else.
All right.
I will check.
You will check. Excellent. We also have Lyle in the chat room.
Okay.
Or the meeting. In meeting, yeah. Okay. So, as I said, welcome. And you all should be aware of the note well. If you are not, please spend some time, download the chair slides for the agenda and read those through. So the agenda is like usually. So the next real thing is the status update. So we are going to go through the working group items that we have and what is the status of those. And then we have a bunch of working group documents. So it's going to be a big monologue from Steve, who is the responsible of like 80% of the working group documents at the moment. But that should be fairly quick. So then we actually have still one individual working group document that is about the one of our remaining items, which is the end-to-end security. So there's one presentation about that, and then we have spent some time discussing the other stuff. So the protocol errors, and especially the kind of standard error case answer message, CCF, and how that is supposed to work, and what is the kind of things around that. And then we wrap up. All right. Since last time, so we don't have any new RFCs published except the overall control is the latest one that we actually managed to.
Yeah, but this one was
Yeah.
was the last
Yeah.
time check meeting.
Okay. Yep. So the end-to-end security requirements document is finally submitted to an ISG, and then the request message priority document is moving out of the working group. It's waiting for the write-up at the moment, and the rest of the documents are in the working group and most likely close to a working group last call. Then we had the one remaining proposal for the charter work, which is about this diameter end-to-end security and AVP level security. So we look into that, whether it makes sense or not to continue on that track. And currently we don't have any pending work or new work proposal outside the charter. But the working group document, so there's a new version about the diameter group signaling and some new comments from Steve. So what we have on
So this will be discussed by normally Marco. Marco
okay.
is there.
And Steve, you will go through in detail these documents. Okay, so I don't spend time on those. And we had some updates on the milestones. I saw that we actually updated the milestones. So we don't have too many pending that are too much out of the schedule. So we are at like a 3 months off, which is pretty exceptional for Dyn. We usually count like tens of months, but yeah. Anyway.
So we will discuss that.
Yeah, that's that for the end. So after all the presentation, we'll look into what to do next or to be discussed, like whether we want to extend the charter or not, and what we do with the working group, and whether we have any action points for the next IETF meeting. Right. So the first one to start is Steve. I'll put the slides for you. What is the? Let me check.
And this will be fast.
Yeah, give me a
Take the time.
second. No. I'm like a.
I'd rather walk around outside than sit in here, wouldn't you? Yeah.
The faster the better. So. And just say when I need to flip the slides. I will.
Okay, next slide.
Okay.
Yeah, so there are 4 drafts that I'm working on. Next slide. Message priority, really already went through the status on that. Go to the next slide. There were updates. The 04, there's actually an 03 and then an 04 that contain updates from working group last call, ISG last call, IANA review, and then a GenArts review. all pretty straightforward stuff. I submitted diffs with each of the changes, so hopefully there were no surprises. Next slide. And it's in the final review process basically, so it should pop out pretty quickly, I would imagine, next month or so.
Good.
Next slide. And that was pretty fast too, right? It was like Honolulu when we first started talking about it, maybe.
Yeah.
Kind of record pace.
Yeah. You're making shame of the rest of the working group, you know.
Well, no. It's a matter of jumping on a wave that's already moving, you know, and letting it take it, and not so much so on some of my other drafts. So, so this one is. Can you go back a slide?
Here.
Diameter load.
Oh, load. Okay, yeah. Now I go forward. I needed the context. So next slide. Load's moving pretty quickly too. Again, the changes in the O2 draft is primarily editorial. There were some comments received on the list. Jean-Jacques and I had a number of conversations, and we addressed all of the editor's notes. I think everything in the document is pretty stable now. Next slide. There is one small issue here. The load draft uses the source ID AVP, which is defined in the agent overload draft. So we would probably need to, if we keep it as it is, we would need advanced agent overload peer report first, or finish at least, before load could go in. We have another option which creates additional work for me, small, to move the source ID definition into load and then have it referenced there from the agent overload draft. If we're going to advance all of these through working group last call at the same time, then it's probably okay the way it is. If we want to hurry this one through, then we probably need to make a change. So I'll take advice.
Okay, so how far is this the agent overload draft?
In my opinion, all of these drafts are ready for working group last call.
Okay, so then I don't think that we need to do any kind of fiddling around with the content. The other one might sit like a month or something longer than usually in waiting for the normative reference, but
Right.
I wouldn't
That's really all
care
it
about
is.
that. So.
Yeah. Okay. So if people are comfortable with that, then we can go forward that way. Yeah.
Sorry, what was the?
To leave it as is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Assuming that all of these drafts are going to working group last call about the same time.
But just one question about the definition itself of the source ID. What is exactly the definition in the agent overload draft?
The agent overload draft defines the peer report. So the definition is of the node that inserted the overload report, or the node that advertised support also of the peer report feature. It's used in a similar, all it is a diameter ID that is the source of, or the entity that introduced, in the case of load, it'd be the entity, the node that inserted a load report as opposed to an overload report.
Yeah, it was about the definition of actually is it in the definition of the society it is related to overload, the one who generates the overload report, or it's something generic? Because we could also define a kind of overload society and a load society, saying that you may have different type of identifier depending on what you are sending back to others.
Yeah, I'll go back and look at the text to make sure that it's right, but it's meant to be generic because it's also used in advertising capabilities,
Okay.
not just inserting a report.
Okay.
So it should be clean, and we can make sure it is.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, so agent overload. Next slide. Again, this is both addressing the agent overload problem and defining the peer report type in order to solve that problem. And the updates were editorial, and then also making it consistent with DOIC. Primarily, that was just referencing the RFC instead of the draft. Weren't any other real significant changes made. Next slide. And we have had a lot of review of this. It's been a while since we've had a lot of review. There haven't been major changes. I think the last major change was when I made it cleaner, the separation between peer report and rate, which comes next. So the document has been pretty stable for a while. It was primarily waiting for DOIC to finish. So I think it's ready for working group last call. So, next slide. And finally, rate control. And I have had people, Martin Dolly being one of them, and he expressed this on the list, reaffirming their support for rate being defined. Same kind of update, making consistent with DOIC references primarily. A few editorial, every time I look at something, I find a I that's not dotted or a T that's not crossed. But this one is also dependent on agent overload because it's dependent on the peer report type in that case. Next slide. And again, we had, I'm not sure we've had as much review on this one as we had on agent overload. So it might benefit more from a few people doing a detailed scrub on it. But the content is pretty stable. And I think it's modulo some review, which can be done as part of working group last call, ready for working group last call as well. So, and that should be it.
Yeah, all right. Thank you. Thank you for excellent work on this.
So we have documents that are almost ready for working group last call. So what I will ask, so it maybe not be so practical to go through working group last call for all the documents at the same time. So as you proposed also. So I think it's not about IETF meetings, but we can do it in sequence, and as soon as one is completed, we can start the other one. I would recommend to start with the load one, because with the load,
the one problem with that is the dependency on agent overload.
yeah.
So probably start with the working group last call with the document that has most dependent documents. So
Right. So that would be agent overload.
yeah. Okay.
And then load, I agree, would be next, and then
Yeah. Okay.
and then rate.
Okay, so we will need to go through again a revision of these documents, a review of these documents to ask for review, and we can do it through a working group last call, just to ensure that because we have a kind of not yet a dependency within within a 3GPP, because they are referencing now in a technical report, but the conclusion of this technical report is that the load information could be useful inside 3GPP networks. So
Right.
the next step will be to rely on the AVP defined to report the load. So
Right.
at this time, we need to have to rush. It will be done, I think, in the release 14 timeframe. So we have some time, but we will need to have something standardized at the end very soon. So we will push people also working on the loads aspect to review the overload. So people from 3GPP, like Jean-Jacques, Maria Cruz, and so on.
Yeah.
And to have a review to close the agent overload, and after that, moving on the review on the load one.
Is there time pressure on getting the AVP number assigned? Because we've done that. We did that with DOIC. Is asked for early assignment.
Honestly, I don't think so. So next week we have a meeting. In 3GPP. So I will ask for that. Because load was not, I think it was assumed to be to include the load information for the release 13 timeframes. That is not the case anymore. So we have some time to do the work for release 14.
Okay, cool.
All right. So the next thing on the agenda is the group signaling. So do we have any slide material?
Yeah.
It's not in the. I don't have it.
I have it. We have something to discuss. I can display it if you want, but
Okay.
Okay, group signaling again. So the work is progressing slowly.
just one second.
No problem. The draft version number 5 actually expired recently in January, and we provided a minor update before this IETF meeting, soliciting feedback. And thanks very much to Steve to provide comments about the latest revision, which is a minor update. And you really hit point of some of the open items which you need to be more clear. Okay, so version 6 is the recently published one, and actually covers only minor updates. And yeah, we need to address Steve's comments. I hope that most of them can be tackled quickly by taking a decision on how the protocol operation should be in these different cases you address. And I think more discussion needs to be on the section about the proxy agent support. And not sure if we can go through this today or if we do this offline on the list, but let's go through the list first. I'm not sure how much time you scheduled for that.
1 hour if you want.
1 hour? Oh boy. Okay, let's start. Yeah, very good point that we didn't take care too much about consistency in using the keywords, so we need to go through. A proposal would be that we take the current version 6 and take a decision about the keywords, if it should be must, may, or accordingly, and highlight them so it's easier to identify, and then to discuss if the decision is the right one to have a must or a may here.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue was capitalization. I think there were, the use of the words was probably actually pretty correct, except must was not capitalized a lot, and which means that it's not a 2119 usage. So
yes, and it has a meaning. So if it's mandatory or a recommendation, so we really should thoroughly think about each of the steps in the protocol operation, in particular, and take a decision if it should be mandatory or optional, and phrase it accordingly, according to the capitalization. All right. Next one. So you thoroughly read the current description, and server rejection of group assignment. What's this one again? All right. The point here is that a client may ask the server to assign a new session to a session group, and the server may accept it or reject it. So in case of rejection, so asking for a group assignment is being done by setting a flag in the session allocation action. And the current mechanism for rejection is that the server indicates in the response to the client's request, setting the session allocation action or resetting it and clearing it. So that's the indication to the client that the session has not been assigned to the session group, but I so far don't see a reason why the session should survive. So why should we initiate again the process without assigning the session to a group in the request?
okay, I forgot I'm supposed to say my name, Steve Donovan. So that what's not clear is you're talking about requests or requests for group allocation. And we say that it rejects the request. Is that the diameter request that it's rejecting? Or is it just rejecting the embedded group allocation protocol request that's happening? I read it well, I don't remember how I read it exactly. It could be either way. If you're rejecting the diameter request, then the session no longer exists at all, right? Well, depending on which request it is, if it's a session initiation request.
I think even if the server can reject a group assignment, the request may be successful. So that's
But you say reject the request.
Ah, okay. So we need to be clear which kind of rejection it is.
Yes.
So
yeah, exactly.
The actual meaning when writing this was rejecting the assignment to a group.
Right.
Yeah.
So if we make it clear, then it's acceptable to let the session actually survive if the request itself is successful.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
The rejected here is related to the previous one in the sentence above.
Oh, now I see the full sentence.
Accept or reject the request for group assignment, but
Right.
it should be clarified anyway in this one to
Yeah.
ensure that we are not speaking about rejecting the request, so the access request, for instance.
Yeah, there are a few other places that confusion gets in there. Now, maybe it's just that I didn't read it close enough, but the clarifying text would be good.
But we will clarify that.
No, that's very good. All right, so we have a way to tackle this one. Next one. Server partial success of session group assignments. The point here was that a client may ask the server to assign a new session to more than one group, let's say 3 groups, for whatever reason. So the server, so your point was that if the assignment of the session to 2 groups was successful, but in one case it was a failure. We didn't think about this case yet, so what could be a reason to make the assignment in one group fail, but the other one success? So if there is a failure because of lack of resources, then it should be a rejection of the whole group assignment.
Well, that's the fundamental question.
Okay.
Because I would guess there's probably also so resource availability is one reason. There may also be policy about what in the server. There may be policy about what sessions can go into what groups. I don't know. I can perceive or conceive of that kind of an implementation, in which case the server would, based on policy, decide whether it can insert a session into a group. And once you allow a session to be in multiple groups, that request happening in a single request for multiple groups, then if there is the ability for the server to reject an individual request for group allocation, then this can happen. But the fundamental one is resources, but there could be policy also.
There may be different reasons. So the question is only if we tackle that case or not. From signaling point of view, I don't see a big issue with it. So if the client asks for assignment of the session to 3 groups, each group is identified in an own session group info AVP. So in the feedback, there may be 2 of these allocation flags being set and the third one being cleared, which is an indication to the client that the 3rd group assignment was not successful. But the question is, what should be the reaction from the client? So if the client is not happy with that reduction of group assignment, how to react? So other way around is that if one of the group assignments fails, we reject the whole group assignment. That's simplistic, maybe a little bit rough.
Well, I'm not even necessarily, I was just asking, but you also have the last sentence up there that the server must include all session group info AVPs as received from the client, which says you can't clear one. Say that one was not. It implies that it's all or nothing is the way I read that.
But that should be fine. So if session 1 and 2 were successful, session 3 was a failure. For all 3 groups, the server may send in response the session group info AVP, but only the 3rd one has flag cleared. So it's clear to the client that this.
It's the as received words that I'm like, it implies you can't change them from what was sent by the client.
Okay. So the session group info AVP will be there for the 3 groups. But for one of them, you will have a modification because it will say, for instance, for the one for which the assignment fails, you will have the flag cleared.
So
it's not as received, but it's
right. Yeah, I understand.
It's corresponding to the session group info received.
It would be good to have words indicating that the session group AVP sent in the answer will reflect the status of each request.
Exactly.
Right.
So it's adding text to be more clear about details. So we can keep that as it is, but clarify that in our example, the 3rd flag has to be cleared to reflect the status of the service decision.
The words as received imply that you can't change it.
It's 1-to-1. Yeah. Okay.
So those words need to go away with a clarification along the lines of what is sent back reflects which sessions were accepted and which sessions were rejected.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point. All right.
And I think that the clarification saying that it will be, if there is any failure in the group assignment, it will be up to the client to decide what to do according to the response received from the server. So it's up to the server to decide to reject everything or to have a partial success. And it's up to the client to decide if he wants to go on with the partial assignment or he would like to close the session. I think it should be
Right.
depending on the server behavior and the client behavior.
Sure, that makes sense. One thing that wasn't clear to me, as you say that popped into my head, was at some point there's text that says once a session assignment request fails, then the session must be treated as not in a group. This is a corner case for that, where you could actually have one fail and another succeed, and this session is still in a group despite a failure of a group assignment request. So we'll have to clarify that wording too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that the client needs to manage the requests, each individual request for group assignments, and decide what to do if the request for assignments was not successful.
Yes.
All right. So there was another good point. If the server takes a decision to assign a session to group, but the client the client fails with adding this session to the group. So the current mechanism is as follows. Maybe also not unambitious enough, I don't know. But if the client is able to assign sessions to groups, it adds the session group info AVP. Only then the server may do group assignment or not. So I think the case where the client indicates to the server, I'm ready to do group assignment or to handle it, and in the end, when the server takes a decision to do group assignment, is not able to handle, should be rare. But maybe you made a good point that we need to handle that case.
I agree, it should be rare, but you have the same resource potential. You probably don't have the policy concern in this case, because the client wouldn't have indicated ability in the first place, although there may be corner cases there as well. But resource-wise, when it sends a request, it has the resources available. When it gets a response back, it doesn't. You have the concern here is, and I haven't thought about it enough to know the ramifications, but if you have the state saved in the clients that is different than the state saved in the server for these resource allocations, it seems bad things can happen, especially when you have proxies in the middle that are maintaining state as well. So the primary driver for my suggestion here was, our question, I guess, is, one, is it bad for state to be inconsistent between clients, the universal set of clients and servers, and if so, how do we make sure the state's always the same between the two? Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. Especially if you have multiple groups and the server can assume that sending one, for instance, abort session request using one specific group, because you have one specific session inside, will be enough to remove this one. And if it was not maintained up to date in the client, this will fail for at least one session.
Right.
So I think we should clarify this.
So in case we assume that rare case may happen, of course we should tackle it. So not synchronized state between client and server shouldn't happen. So what's the way out here? Shall the client then terminate the session in case it's not able to handle the group assignment?
I think it will be the safer one. Maybe we can check if, for instance, a should would be enough to say that. But I think that we need to clarify these points, because actually, as said by Steve, I think we need to ensure consistent states between the client and the server. just to avoid any corner cases. So at least we may have a recommendation, because I think that there is no notion of mandatory or optional assignment today. So if the server is requesting 4 group assignments, I think that the client should be able to comply to the request from the server. And if not, the only way is to reinitiate a request. There is no, you cannot answer to an answer from the server. So
Yes.
you will have to do something. And I think we should clarify this.
But in the reinitiated request, the client should not include the session group info AVP. So the server does not assign the same session again to a group. Okay. Propose text and send it to the mailings. Yeah, there is a case which I think is a leftover from early versions, as far as I see. So it's kind of hard server rejection of grouping. So the current mechanism for a server to reject a group assignment is to send back the session group in for AVP and clear the flag of the session allocation. The case that in the request has session group info AVP, but the response does not have. That was, I think, from a situation or an earlier version where we used adding this info AVP or not as capability discovery. So since some versions we added this capability vector, and we have still the case covered here that the response may have no session group info AVP added. So for whatever reason that may happen, yeah, I think for sure the client cannot assume the group to be assigned to the session to be assigned to the group. It's probably the same behavior than from the client as in the previous case, right?
But honestly, I don't really see the problem for this one. So you are a client sending a request for a group assignment, and you have no response at all from the server from a group assignment point of view. So in that case, it is sure that at least for this request, the server is not able to handle group assignments. So the client will know that this session anyway will be managed as a single session.
Yes, but the mechanism for the server to indicate to the client that it's not accepting the group assignment is to include the session info AVP, but with a flag cleared.
No, but this one is for a server updated to support the group assignment feature. If the server does not support at all, it will not send back anything. If it is a legacy server.
But if it doesn't support it all, that should be indicated previously already in the capability vector.
So this is a protocol error. What I'm calling out is a protocol error. It has indicated support for session group AVPs, but it's not sending. It's not constructing responses correctly when it can't create the. In which case we don't have. Our RFCs don't have to handle cases where people write their code wrong, that don't comply with the protocol, right? Does that make sense? I mean, I don't fully understand the negotiation process, the capability negotiation process. I have to go back and look and read the spec. But if it's thinking off the top of my head now, if it's a first request sent by the client to the server, it doesn't know yet whether the server supports the capability or the feature,
yes.
Right?
Yes, and as it was introduced, so this one is for server not supporting at all, so it is not aware of the group assignment in this case, from my point of view. I will check in the text where it is exactly. But we have two different cases. One, you have a server updated to support the feature,
Yeah.
but it doesn't want to use a group assignment with this specific client because there is
Right.
by policy. The other one is that you are sending a request to a node not supporting the feature. So anyway, you will not receive any indication back from this server.
But that should be previously known from other sessions that has been established between these two peers, client server. using the capability vector. So being able to process or not.
But the capability vector are only between peers. If you
Yes.
have a client, a proxy, and so on, you don't know. So what we have created with this capability vectors, or a feature in this mechanism, is just to have a kind of end-to-end negotiation.
Yes. Okay. So that means in that case, when the response does not have the session group info AVP at all, that's an indication to the client that the server does not support. So it should take a log, something like this, right?
Yeah, at least it was in this direction, I think, and I will check if it is still consistent and if consistent and clear in the text that we are in this case.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Use of group response action AVP. So finally, sessions have been assigned to groups, and now group commands are being executed. And the point here was that in a group command, the request may indicate how the response should be treated. And your point was that it's not clear why a per session kind of response may be expected, though we use group signaling here. So when this work started, I think the point was from the very beginning to keep this back as flexible as possible, though it should be consistent, of course. Here, the point was, and I had a look to Mark's draft before this became a working group draft, and that was kind of in that document already. And the point is that even though a request for reauthentication may be sent to the whole group, reauthentication must happen per session. But to maintain flexibility, application-specific group reauthentication, as it is being used by many applications to initiate a process from the server side, a different mechanism may apply to also expect per group or for all groups kind of reauthentication process. So that allows being flexible for other applications.
So a more fundamental question that after I sent my comments, I started thinking about this, and it wasn't clear to me. You have a group in the server. It's got 1,000 sessions in it. Which session does the server choose to if it wants to apply something to all sessions in that group? Can it choose any one of those 1,000 sessions to send the update request in, and the client needs to be able to handle that? So it's not the first one is the anchor session or anything. No concept like that, and that's good. Except it's processing overhead on searching the session group. Okay, that makes sense. I don't know that text is in the document. It might be good to add something clarifying about that.
Any session can be used. Any session ID can be used.
Any session ID in the group that you're trying to affect can be used. Yeah.
We can check this actually.
Yeah, that's probably not a big deal. So the all groups I'm trying to get my head around. Server is sending something, sending an update on a session and indicating that it wants it to apply to all groups that this session is a member of. Wow. Why? I mean, I understand flexibility, but I understand the per session, that per group or per session, that I get now. But why would you ever want it to be all groups? What's the use case that drives that? It's a pretty complex implementation.
First, because we like to complexify everything. The second one was that you may have multiple groups with kind of similar I think I will have to think about it, but I think that it was related to the fact that you are creating a request asking to put this single session in multiple groups. And I think that the use case at this time was to be able to manage for instance, multiple charging characteristics with few differences, but as soon as you have you are creating multiple groups, but for one characteristic, this characteristic is shared by all the groups.
Yes. But then you can just have another group that is all groups.
It's
Yeah.
I think it's valid. I think it was more about having the flexibility to do for all the groups at once, or to do it per groups or per sessions.
Yeah, I understand that. I just it's pretty complex concept to, I mean, just processing overhead. You have to search then.
But I don't think
It's not that it's doable, but I mean, it's a strange. It seems strange to me to add that level of complexity.
But it shouldn't,
especially when you can solve that problem by creating another group and adding the ones that you want to be into that other group. If you're defining a meta group that has everything, that you just put everything into a special group, because it can be multiple groups anyway. But
we can discuss this on the mailing list and to see if there is a strong reason to keep the first ones, the all groups. Saying that for per groups, per session,
that makes sense.
Makes sense.
Yes.
And to see if there is a specific use case where the all groups could be. If not, it is something that could be anyway. It is unsigned, so we can define per group, per session, and if maybe in the future there is a need for all groups, it could be included.
But I don't think it's meant to be all existing groups. It's meant to be all groups that are given in the request.
That this session in the request are all groups that this session is a part of.
So in the request, the server may indicate one or multiple groups where the command should apply. So if it adds 3 groups, so it should only apply to all these 3 groups. So for example, if the session is in one or multiple groups and the server sends a request to, for example, change the QS of all sessions in all these 3 groups, there may be a response only once, indicating successful implementation of the request for all these groups. In this case, the server may get back 3 requests, 3 responses, right?
So I guess the first thing you need to define what is meant by impacted groups.
Yes. Yeah, I think we need clarifying text.
Yeah, we need to move on anyway. So
Okay.
we'll go on the
Clarify
discussion
this.
on the mailing list. It's a good one, but we need to move on a little bit. So you have 2 minutes just to maybe to highlight, or there is a two slides. I would just propose to not go through this one. Anyway, we will discuss it on the mailing list.
Let's do that way. Yes,
Okay.
that's fine.
Maybe you can ask. So the last one will be the next.
Yes, the next is, of course, as said, to implement the keywords accordingly and capitalize them. Then resolve and address the spotted issues. Of course, discuss each of them on the list. Shall we use issue tracker or just a subject that identifies? And to not delay the process too much and update soon after IETF 95. So I start the discussion with making proposals then soon after IETF.
Yeah, and just a request that we look really carefully at the state consistency question.
Yeah.
And maybe to look at it to see if it's really an issue, but it just feels to me that as things are there now, things can get out of sync, and that seems like it's likely to cause problems that we can't anticipate right now. So, yeah.
Thank you.
You have more slides?
Yeah.
All right, so this is the continuation of the end-to-end security stuff that we have had earlier. So next slide, please.
Once.
So the kind of background, we had this in a charter that submit the problem statement requirements and blah, blah, blah. That is pretty much done like in a normal time schedule 4 years late. And then we have this maintaining or processing along the standard stack base protocol and application includes extensions diameter base protocol that can be considered as an enhancement features or bug fixes. So the end-to-end security kind of falls into that category because we don't have end-to-end security in the whole protocol at the moment. And the for this meeting, kind of testing the waters, I resurrected one of the old works, a very old draft. So can you go to the next slide? All right. Changes since 10 IETFs ago. I don't think I even changed the affiliation or whatever. I don't know. So someone could check that. But anyway, so I made sure that it actually compiles with the new tools. Okay, the next one. So the I just remind you about what was done 10 IETFs ago. So the in scope of that proposal is that kind of AVP level protection. So we have integrity protection and confidentiality protection for the AVPs. And explicitly out of scope of this proposal is the authentication and authorization of the endpoints and the key management. So it's kind of assuming that those latter two out of scope things somehow exist, because I really didn't find any pleasure of trying to define a new key management protocol or something like that. There must be something that we can reuse completely. So let's go for the next one. And the current proposal follows what the requirements said, and it basically covers these two cases that you have the kind of site-to-site security. So you have the legacy boxes in your own realm, and then you have some kind of interconnection / roaming network in between, but then you have the updated, upgraded edge boxes between the security perimeters, basically. And those boxes are the kind of endpoints for the end-to-end security. So you get through the hostile roaming environment back to your secure own realm. And the other one is the case where you actually go really end-to-end. So the client and the server, they actually know how to do security and do that really end-to-end. So then not even the boxes inside your own realm can do anything about the AVPs and so on. So these two cases are covered with the proposal. Next slide. So on the protect on the AVP, so there's a so it basically goes into a line that you have a new grouped AVP where you put the stuff that you want to protect, and then you calculate the signature and have the signature shipped along. And then we have the encrypted data if you want to have the confidentiality protection. The current proposal is tailored around JSON and use the JWS and JWE for the how it works. It's kind of okay. There's been some development since that, and now already quite a long ago it was obvious that the maybe something CBOR and what COSE is defining could be more appropriate instead of JSON. So I didn't kind of feel like rewriting that part. I was very lazy.
It's maybe it's Steve Donovan, maybe a silly question, I don't know, but I'm trying to understand. So we've got a group of diameter AVPs that already have an encoding.
Yep.
The attribute value pair encoding. Are we saying we would translate that into JSON and then encrypt it, or translate that into CBOR and then encrypt
So
it?
it's like when you calculate the signatures of the AVPs and how you define what you were using and so on, and what keys were used and blah blah blah. That stuff is encoded in
So you're just talking about the two new AVPs.
Yes.
Why would they not be AVP formatted also?
Let's go and check what I have there. So
Okay.
I really don't remember everything on top of my head. So if you go next slide. So the signed data AVP, so that carries a JSON, so it's an octet string, basically this AVP, and it carries the JSON web signature of the one or more AVPs. And each of the product AVPs has and the hash is included in this JVS payload. And whatever you have as then the JSON stuff is then put as is inside this AVP. And whatever AVPs we calculate the signature over, we have a kind of linkage to those, like we have the AVP codes and such, so that we can actually find those AVPs and check that that we have, so that we can figure out that the original AVP is intact. And why we have this kind of funny referencing back, not just like taking a bulk of the AVPs and calculating hash over those, is that now that we do that individually, it actually allows that the middle boxes go and rearrange or delete, or so it doesn't get confused by that. It's a bit more processing when you do the verification, because you actually need to get all the AVPs and find the one that actually matches your hash and stuff like that. But I would expect that is minor compared to the kind of overhead of the security in general. It's just a bit more complex data structure. So the payload and the signature use the same hash algorithm for the blah blah blah. Okay, and this follows kind of the principles what we also use with DOIC. So you can plug this into on top of the existing applications. They are all like optional AVPs. So if someone goes and drops your security AVPs, those signed AVPs on the root, it will be okay. The other end that is expecting to have the security may then complain and figure out that, okay, I didn't get anything, so I better not trust this one. Okay. Next one.
Just a question regarding the multiple instances of the same AVP. So can you have, so do you?
You can have, because each of these multiple instances, they have the different signature. So like if you have 3 instances of AVP foo, you would have 3 signatures of those, and each of those would be different. So when you start looking those, of course, you need to calculate the signature of the kind of original AVPs, and then you just do the comparison you find.
So you sign each AVP? When
Yeah.
Okay.
So they are signed individually, just to allow this rearrangement and stuff like that.
Okay, it was not so clear.
Yeah.
You hash them all.
Yeah. All right, next one. Encrypted, it pretty much somewhat same principles, but kind of now that we actually want to encrypt, we won't have the AVPs as a plain text anymore. So they are put inside the grouped AVP, encrypted, and so you have no idea what is inside there. So that obviously causes also a situation that you cannot encrypt such AVPs that are needed to be there as a plain text, like something routing and forwarding related AVPs.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions. It's not addressed in this draft.
I don't think I have explicit text about that yet. So,
But the intent would be to, and this
yeah,
draft
of
is
course,
good
it's kind
capturing
of
the,
understood that you cannot do that. So,
well, but we probably need must level
Yeah.
statements that you can't
Yeah.
encrypt.
we had this discussion earlier at some point,
I don't
and
recall.
I think I documented it somewhere. Maybe it's in the requirements, so I don't remember.
But it would, the
Yeah.
intent is to pull
Intent
it.
is like a, you cannot encrypt such AVPs that has to be, the middle boxes has to be able to look into. Then the best you can do is that you can like integrity protect them. So that's the best that you can do.
Yeah.
The kind of downside of this one is, of course, that because now that you are basically doing a thing like a, you have an AVPs that in some cases are like a plain text, and sometimes they are encrypted, and when they are encrypted, they are not included as plain text in your CCF anymore. So you cannot you cannot really use this with the existing applications, unless you are go and encrypt the optional AVPs, which doesn't always make sense.
Yeah, I understand that. I was just thinking on the previous point, you potentially could allow encryption of the routing headers or routing AVPs if it was only done hop to hop.
Yeah, but
Why? But
yeah, but we are looking for the end-to-end. So
sure.
yeah.
But did you think about encrypting only the AVP content? When you were
And
looking-
not the AVP header, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like if I want to encrypt something, why would really reveal anything about the AVP that I had inside? So you can always, even today, without doing a new security solution, you can always encrypt the content of the AVP if you so wish. If there is no specific content defined or structured content defined for that AVP. So if my memory serves correctly, we left that kind of encrypting only the AVP content intentionally out of the solution. Because if I encrypt, I want to reveal as little as possible.
Yeah, but the thing is that you may decide to. It would mean that any essential information that you would like to have in a comment need to be optional, because you cannot put any more a mandatory AVP in the comment. For instance, the username cannot be required in the comment, because if you want to encrypt the username, you will have to put it in the encrypted data, or so either put a dummy information in the username in the comment, or put nothing. And if you put nothing, it means that you...
Well, as I said, you most likely need a new application when you want to have a secure encryption. And well, you don't really need the username outside 3GPP for routing purposes, but yeah, so you have obvious issues if you start hiding, so that's why it's better to go with the new applications.
But my comment was to say that if you can encrypt only the contents, you can have the AVP present. No one will be able to see the contents, but at least from a CCF point of view, you will be able to know that this information that is required is present.
Unless you have a strict formatting rule for the content of the AVP. It's kind of like for username, if it has to be an AI and you find some gibberish inside it, it's kind of going to fail at some point. If it's some middle box, basically. But that's something that probably needs to be rehashed, this whole thinking, if this goes forward. All right, next one. Error handling. we had some couple of new error codes, transient and permanent failures. You don't know the keys or the header name error that was about the JSON stuff. Permanent failures like your decryption fails for some reason, or your signature fails. So you want to like kind of indicate the other end that something bad happened. You could just also do the thing that you just terminate the connection without saying anything, but or timeout stuff in a bad way. But we had a couple of error codes. Okay, the next one. Anyway, so honestly, so this version is just a resurrection of the old draft. It shows the basic principles that we selected back then. It has some examples, kind of basic things, and why we ended up to some solution. The question that I have is like what is the kind of first reaction about the overall framework? Like could this document among all the other security proposals work as a starting point if we want to go and define end-to-end security? I understand that it would require some minor tweaking, changes, and of course I welcome all the feedback. And then did I have any other slides?
No.
All right. So this is basically it. So you need to look into the draft for the examples how these things work. Or you can go back to the presentation in IETF 85. It actually has some beautiful figures how the things go around. So because it has the encryption examples and so on. So that is a bit more informative. So
No problem. Go on.
that's pretty much it. So
any feedback on the proposal anyway?
Or like maybe the bigger question is like do we actually want to go and define the end-to-end security? I mean, it needs more than one people to do it.
Yes.
You mean, well, we did just have a end-to-end security requirement progress to RFC, right? That would imply that we need to define the mechanism. Is that the question? Or is the question?
It basically says because these two documents were done like as a tag team, so that they pretty much like a requirements point to a solution like this,
right?
And because we didn't really add and remove anything on the requirements that was originally proposed there, so some stupid stuff was removed, but nothing else.
But were you asking if we need to actually do this?
Yeah.
Why not? Just because it's work, or
people are lazy. I mean, no. The thing is, of course, that if we want to do it, let's do it. But it would I know that there are a few security-minded people here in the room, back in the room, for example. So, who could be? Because we kind of need to. Okay, we need to have a customer, for example. Do we have does 3GP actually want end-to-end security solution? That's the first question, because that's probably the biggest customer what we have.
And the answer is likely yes. The likely means that there is no security requirements at all regarding diameter, or the one applicable for the general 3GPP architecture or network are not complying with any diameter requirements anyway.
Yeah.
So the thing is that up to now, it was okay because mainly the main diameter interfaces were internal interfaces.
And we all know that IPX and CRX are not that secure environments anymore
Exactly. So
by design.
now there is more and more question regarding the security, maybe not strictly related to security, but about integrity. Now we are roaming interface on which you have a charging info, and as soon as you have charging, you have question regarding security and reliability on the information that you will receive.
Oh, you are not. Okay.
So it's even if the requirements today is maybe not in any report, but there is more and more discussion about this type, and it is also related to the work that we have done on overload and load, saying that if there is nothing to say, so if you are using this information only in your internal network, it's up to any operator to try to do that, even if it is a requirement for an operator to be able to protect that. But as soon as you will have roaming interfaces, you will need to have something at least to rely on. And we cannot rely on GSMA for that anyway. So we have to provide this kind of, so from my point of view, it's a must. Obviously, we need people to work on.
Okay.
And the second point maybe would be to see with Stefan, unfortunately he's not there, but.
Well, we have.
No, Stefan is there, but our AD.
Farrell?
Well, yeah. I think it could be also useful to have people with more knowledge about security and so on to work with us on this one, because I've even tried to go further with your draft or with another one, with a new one, but I think I'm not an expert on this, and we need to have more people involved also from the security side. So maybe we can have a kind of not a design team, but to have a bunch of people working on the solution. With a diameter background, but also with a security background.
And there's basically one guy here in IETF that has done both at the moment.
And who?
Who is not with us anymore.
You mean Hannes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I talked to Hannes and this kind of tickled some sweet spot in him. So yeah, because he got excited about the CBOR and stuff like that. So. I think he's still one of the authors of the draft.
Yes.
Yeah. The problem is like that. Do you get cycles from him?
But maybe we can officially ask for any support for at least for this one, even if he doesn't want to.
Yeah. I know that.
To work anymore on diameter, but.
Yeah. Anyway, okay. So. Do I feel that there's a slight support of doing this?
Yes.
Okay. And the people should, I'm not going to ask for an adoption, but the people should actually check the document and.
Yeah, my short point on that would be, yeah, my short point would be that we can use this one as a starting point to trigger any work on the end-to-end security solution, and maybe based on this work we may also identify some holes that could be filled either with this solution or with another solution. But at least we need to start with one.
Yeah. All right. It's not a big one, so go and read it. So. All right. Good.
Good.
Then we go to your stuff, right?
Yes.
We were supposed to be finished or?
No. You haven't seen the new one. Okay, protocol errors, EBITs, answer. So next slide. So this was triggered by discussion with different vendors, mainly at the same time. Maybe it was due to some interoperability issue between the same vendors. So next slide, please. Okay, so it just to highlight what is currently in the RFC. So it is in 6733, but it was also in the 3588. So we have the command flags, and inside the command flag we have the error bits. So it is clearly said that it is something set when you have a protocol error, and when you have a protocol error, so when the EBIT is set, you have a specific format for the CCF. So next slide. So this is a generic one, and it said, so you have something like that with, so obviously origin host, origin realm, and so on, the result code, but you have error messages and experimental result and whatever you want to say that this is something wrong. There is something wrong, and it is a protocol error. So we can, so if you are sending a diameter, so next slide, please. Okay, so, and this is a set of protocol errors. So I've highlighted two specific one, unable to deliver, and the redirection indication. So redirect indication, the redirect indication is used when you are sending the request and you receive back an indication to say, if you want to contact this server, please use this information. So you have additional information inside. And the thing is that, so when you have, for instance, unable to deliver or redirect indication, you are supposed to not comply with the CCF of the answer. So for instance, if you have diameter EAP request, you are not supposed to have in the answer the diameter EAP answer, so the CCF of the diameter EAP answer as defined in the application. You need to rely on the format defined in 7.2. But as you see, we have started in the base protocol. We have included, for instance, inside the CCF format of the session termination request, for instance, answer, for instance, we have included the redirect host information. And it seems to imply that you follow the normal CCF grammar to send back an answer when you have a redirect. This is not really an issue when you have a STA, because all the other ones are optional. So you could say that this one comply anyway with the CCF given in section 7.2.
Yes.
Next one. But because we are doing some copy and paste when we're defining application, when application were defined, they used to take the redirection host information to put this in the answer, in the definition of the answer. And here it's not correct because, for instance, you can see that the auth application ID and auth request type are required AVP. So this information need to be present in any answer, normal answer of the diameter EAP answer. So if you are complying with the base protocol and you are indicating, for instance, unable to deliver or redirect indication, you are supposed to send back a DEA answer, but without the authentication application ID, so the first one, and to put the redirect host information if it is a rejection. And that makes, this is where is the trouble. Either you are complying to the application and to say, oh, but if I want to send redirect indication, for instance, I will use that. And maybe when I send back unable to deliver, I will also use this CCF. Other one complying with the base protocol will rely on the definition given in the section 7.2. So the generic CCF, and in that case, the required AVP will not be there anymore. Okay, next. And it is even worse because it is said that we have to do it for the protocol error, but it is said that in some condition, if you are thinking that it's not necessary for the server, for instance, to generate a proper answer because there is a permanent error, and you just want to rely on an indication to say there is something wrong, but you don't care about the CCF, it is said that you could rely also on the CCF grammar given 7.2. Just to say, this is wrong. For instance, unable to comply for diameter EAP answer would say just, and so the main information inside would be unable to comply. You don't care about all the required AVP. Next slide. So, because we need to start, so I would assume that what it is said in the base protocol is correct. You don't care about any specific grammar when you want to send back a protocol error. And you don't have to. So I would say it's correct. So the EBIT need to be set. And when the EBIT is set, you need to comply with the 7.2. So as a consequence, as I said, any redirection information, for instance, should not be part of the definition of the commands. Or you need to ensure that the CCF of your answer is compliant with the 7.2. Because As long as you can rely only on optional information, everything will comply with 7.2. Yeah, maybe. So general, so go back just a second. Yeah, so normally you should have something to correct that. So the first question is that, are you okay or not with this assumption? And the issue described in this slides, because otherwise I can stop everything. But I think we need to ensure that I think that the worst would be to hide this, and how to correct it's up to us. You can stay, you can move.
So what is the real life problem that you have seen with this?
The redirection is a good example, and you have people receiving. So it could be in both ways, saying that you are sending diameter EAP request, and in the answer you have redirect indication. If you are relying on the 7.2, some vendors say you are not complying with the CCF of the diameter EAP answer.
Yeah, but it has the E bit set, so it should be the what the base protocol RFC says for the CCF.
Yeah, but please, but when you see the definition in this application, they don't care. They just applying what is in the application.
No, that's a bad implementation.
I know, but in that case, it's why I was saying that it was not so good to indicate that the redirect information.
Yeah, that's kind of redundant there.
Exactly.
But it still doesn't mean that if you have unnecessary AVPs in your CCF, that you should somehow unnecessary optional AVPs in your CCF, that you should actually do something specific with them, right?
It's correct.
Yeah.
You don't have to convince me, but I think the issue is that people try to refer to what they
believe that is right,
or at least is not too bad for them. So here it's, again, just to be provocative or to say something, but one way to solve that is to have a new RFC. Actually, I was even trying to work on a draft for this meeting, but an RFC just updating all the existing ones, saying that you could refer to this one on the base, and also in all the existing application defined by IETF, to clarify the use of the EBIT and to clarify also what to do when the EBIT is set. It would be a kind of clarification, but for instance, it could be useful to say, okay, normally it is said, for instance, for the redirect, that you should rely on the, for diameter EAP, for instance, you should rely on the CCF given in the application for that. And that's all. So, and it could be used also for people defining new application to not include this kind of information in the answer, and as a reminder that for protocol errors or even permanent error, you may have something complying with the generic CCF grammar. Uni?
Okay, so couple of thoughts around this. So honestly, I don't think that anything is really broken, specs wise. There's some lousy CCF around which work in a non-error cases. But then there's obviously a bunch of lousy implementations that don't know what they are doing. So, okay, we have had this situation earlier that we have cases that we actually need to kind of clarify what needs to be done, what was the intent of the base protocol. Something that comes to my mind is like the NI-based routing, where we had a bit of similar text. So the base RFC was saying something, and then the reality was something. And anyway, so the okay, I wouldn't go updating the existing RFCs, but if this is a, I mean, if there's an indication like from more than one source that this really is an issue, then I think that kind of a BCP or that kind of informational document saying that this is how you are supposed to write your spec. And next time you write a spec, please have some explicit text and consideration around the redirection and the error protocol errors, and say there's kind of in that way of kind of clarifying the thing. But I wouldn't really go fixing any of these existing specifications. I would understand that this kind of clarification document or the best practice would actually point to a known specifications that don't follow the error answer.
Yeah. The point is that, Jean, please.
So, Yoni, this is Jean Mahoney. Are you suggesting maybe we update the application design guide? We have a informational RFC that updates that, providing guidance for new applications, or?
Well, that would be one possible. So I think there was also some other issues with the application guideline document, so it would be kind of good to refresh it. So that would be one place to do it. Thank you for reminding about that. So
You mean like a BIS version of this one, or?
yeah, BIS.
Okay. Maybe.
So you could kind of, you could actually check if there's something that we thought that is correct, but is not correct. I think there's a couple of kind of border cases that could be clarified even further in the application design guidelines. So we could actually add a new section about this one.
Okay.
Because then it would be like a one design document that has a thing.
Yeah. Actually, it's
And less writing.
first, and it's meant to be anyway a living document, so live documents. So it works. The other point is also to clarify how to behave when you receive some protocol errors. There is very few indication in the base protocol. For instance, for the redirect again, I think that there is no reason to provide. If you receive the redirect indication, so a proxy receive a redirect indication, there is no reason to provide this information back to a client. And this kind of information could be also useful because to know how to use the information received. So either in the result code and also, for instance, additional information like the failed AVP or the redirect indication host. But it's something that we could also clarify if needed using this revision of the design guideline.
Well, okay. Now speaking as the glorious chair. So I just want to get the sense if this really is an issue. I mean, I heard it from you, but is anybody else seeing this as an issue?
You at least you have one here. I don't know if he's speaking or not speaking, but actually I have only produced this because I received the comments from 3GPP side or IETF side, but because I received question regarding the handling of this type of information. So
that person who raised this could actually send a mail to a mailing list so that we could have a record of that.
Exactly.
So, because I haven't seen before this meeting, like, and this presentation, before your email about that this would be an actual real life issue. So if there is someone out there, so please send a note to a mailing list.
I can. I know that there is at least one, and I know another one. So I think they could at least express on the mailing list that it is an issue that needs to be fixed for them. That there is existing interoperability issue regarding this point.
Yeah. Okay. But I think that one source is not enough.
I was saying that it's two different, and I would say even three now. But okay. And what was the last? Yeah. Okay. So what I can do is at least to not to update today, but at least to see what could be put in a revision, and we can anyway decide if it is needed at all or not to do that. But I can at least highlight what is missing in the, what it is not so clear, either in the base protocol or in the application using the base protocol regarding the EBIT setting.
Yeah, this is again like from what I looked into, again a case that there's funny stuff out, but nothing is really broken. If you look into the situations, they still are supposed to work if the implementation is done like if the implementer was here like 15 years ago, he would know what to do, right?
Because it's brand new.
Yeah. Anyway,
I think I will just I think it's a key, because we will close the meeting anyway, but it is one of the key issues that I have with this working group, because there is less and less people in this room with the background of the beginning of the work on diameter. So I have a lot of assumption, and I know it is true, but I think that it's very difficult for new people to get involved in the diameter stuff and understand. So it's one way of trying to do with the application design guideline, but it's true that we have some stuff in the base protocol that are not so clear for new people in this area. I'm not saying that I think it's not a question about skills and so on. It's we have a lot of
yeah. Okay.
So it's as much. So if we can clarify things, I think it's a good point.
Yeah. But as said, I think we need a couple of more indications that this really is an issue.
Yeah.
Gene Mahoney, would clarifying break anything?
No.
If we were to create an informational and clarify it, it wouldn't cause people to go and mess over existing implementations, then I guess what's the harm?
I think that what was raised, at least it was that there is issues, but they don't know. So they need to so there is interoperability issues, and they need to know how to correct that. So it's a ping pong game as often between vendors. So I think that this clarification, at least I have triggered this on the mailing list to be able to highlight this point and to have at least guidelines using the mailing list. After that, we can decide to clarify using a text. But having this discussion clarify at least that the EBIT is used for protocol errors, and if it is protocol error, you have the specific CCF grammar.
Yeah, it would be nice to get people who are having the problem post to the mailing list. I also know that folks who implement 3GPP standards, when there is a lack of clarification, they would like it clarified so they can beat their vendors. So you get into the finger pointings where nobody wants to fix anything until there's something documented, and then somebody can finally say, okay, you fix your implementation.
Exactly.
Okay. Say something about the future.
Not yet. Can discuss again. Stefan said we have time till now and so next to figure out.
All right, we have reached the end of the agenda. Anyone has anything to say? Like give a poem or sing something? Okay. A couple of more things to be discussed, the next topics to add in the charter if needed. So honestly, we are not really looking for a new work because for the sake of extending diameter. So the things. Okay, we have two possible candidates, like that are kind of like the other one has been lingering around from the birth of the diameter, and the other one is a clarification. So those are kind of two potential things. Unless Steve has something in his pocket. No. Okay, good.
I received a question regarding the topology ID again. So I know that at the beginning of the work on overload and so on, and also with end-to-end security, there were a lot of questions regarding topology hiding, and I still don't know if there is some willingness to work on this issue or to hide it.
So with the topology ID, you mean the thing that when there's some evil edge proxy that strips stuff out, it could.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a baseball bat for those guys.
Yeah, I remember we talked about this, and I think asserted that that it's really not an IETF problem. It's more of a GSMA or so the question is, if there's reason to standardize it for interoperability reasons, then I guess we would, right? Is anybody asking for it?
Not anymore, I think, but
Yeah.
it was something. I think that the main topic was about overload and who was overload and so on. But with the society, for instance, was a key point to override this issue. But yeah, it was just people were saying, well, what about topology ID and so on. So
Yeah, it's a valid question, and I think GSMA does have requirements on topology hiding, not how it's implemented, but stuff that should not cross boundaries, I guess, is what they have.
I can check.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
If-
it was not to trigger that. It was
Just think off the top of your head, yeah.
All right. And what action points we have for the next item? So you will get an army of people to back up the
agent overload and load.
well, yeah, but about the new stuff. So for the next IETF, you will, and before the IETF, if we get the more backup on the EBIT handling.
Yes.
All right. Then we have to kind of, I will initiate the discussion on the end-to-end security, and I try to get some of the security people also involved. The security people involved, and also the Stefan in the room could also look into it. Yeah, and then to get what would be actually extremely good, that before the next IETF we would have progressed all the overload control related documents into working group last call and maybe even into ISG. So that would be a nice goal.
Yeah, as an action point, I think I will assign people for the review of the documents, mainly from CGPP because they are the main customer for that.
And again, reminding of the reviews, when we do the working group last call reviews, please use the issue tracker. I mean, we learned from DOIC that it's actually a good tracking method when you have N+1 comments. Yeah. So, okay.
Good.
All right, we're done. So thank you, everybody. Hopefully see you in Berlin in 4 months. Yep. And we ended in time.
Yes.
All right. Now we walk into the bar.
To the bar.
Yeah, of course. Oh, come on.
Too much whiskey yesterday.
Were you in a whiskey box?
Yeah.
I missed that.
Where were you?
I never found out the place.
You're not with the good people.
Well, I didn't really ask around. I was in a phone conference till 5 a.m.
This morning?
Yeah, starting from 9 last night. So.
Good.
So,
So I'll try to get the notes cleaned up, but maybe sometime next week.
Okay.
That's a poor last session, and then heading off to the falls.
so next time we start also complaining about an outtake the hoist. That's a bad truck because all the back days. Saying that we need to start complaining about
My notes, so people. But so they were encouraging people to use Etherpad, but actually I'm pretty dyslexic with my output. So when I type, it's a total mess.